So we watched stuff, and if you didn't know, we watched the trilogy of Matrix.
Yeah.
Which is what I get my cool name from. My Matrix name was Trilogy.
Favorite movie as a child, other than Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Terminator 2 lasted up into adulthood. Yeah. Matrix lasted until
until you stop believing.
Yeah, honestly.
You never stop believing in the Terminator. That's true. Mm-hmm. For our viewers and listeners, this was my first time watching it. So that was fun, watching all of them, actually. I know what it's about, and I knew the clips, and I knew the stuff, so I just know, it just never came up.
I think you just need to up your sci-fi game. I think that's more so it.
I definitely have been out of it. I just, robots and,
I feel like future sci-fi,
tech, all that, I was just
seen it.
I don't need it. But I enjoyed it. It was fine. I had a fun time. So the first film of Matrix was in 1999. It is directed by the Wachowski sisters, Lana and Lily. So the first one is a computer hacker learns from mysterious rebels about the true nature of his reality and his role in the war against its controllers. And then there was a second one.
There is. Reloaded. Neo and his allies race against time before the machines discover the city Zion and destroy it. While seeking the truth about the Matrix, Neo must save Trinity from a dark fate within his dreams.
Yes. And then you're left with a to be continued at the end of a movie. Wild.
Yeah, both from 2003. They just kept filming.
Yeah. It just was 2 movies worth of content. Yeah. So then we also got Revolutions, also 2003. The human city of Zion defends itself against the massive invasions of the machines as Neo fights to end the war at another front, while also opposing the rogue agent Smith. Mm-hmm. That's what happened.
It did. We watched it. The whole time.
Yeah, everyone knows. Everyone knows what the Matrix is about. And, I part of me was, reluctant to do this episode because I was like, this is stuff everybody already heard. You can't really get that deep, but I'm just going to put my own spin on what this film does. I think we'll revisit some of this when we do a later episode about really cool filming techniques, because there's some really notable, historic things that happened with filming The Matrix, and also, stunt-related, and, just with all of that we'll talk to someone who's super knowledgeable in that. Mm-hmm. So I won't be geeking out about film techniques. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry.
It will happen.
Yeah.
In a
later
different simulation.
Instead, this will be geared towards what we're supposed to be learning from The Matrix, and I just want everyone to just have a seat, right? Because we are about to have some fun in the way that the ghouls do. Mm-hmm. Because The Matrix is very much relevant right now to what is happening. It's so many years ago that this was made, and now I'm this is so relevant right now. I wish people understood what themes are and motifs and symbolism.
Now we're gonna.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into some current issues, and the main theme behind Matrix, which I found to be the oppression of our capitalistic society.
Nice.
Yeah. I can't wait for, the comments when they're not everything is capitalism or the patriarchy.
But it
Stop
is,
being
though.
A liberal, crazy person. It is, though.
But it is, though.
But it is. You better put on your glasses, because it's going down. So, there won't be so much, there's spoilers in that, the whole thing is that he's in the Matrix. So that's the big spoiler that everyone knows.
It's also from 1999. The first initial spoiler. Yeah. 1999.
Watching it as someone who's super late to the game, when we were watching it at the beginning, I was and I was telling Kat, I was this is such a good horror movie, because just imagine that time period. I'm being super
imagine young. Me go back in time.
Imagine me go back to I'm being young person right now. Gen Z's where they're what's a VHS player? And you're oh. That's kind of how I felt. But I'm just imagining being back in time, watching this for the first time, not knowing what it's about, and just seeing this dude who gets this message on his computer, and it's you can tell from the computer that this is very new technology, right? It's so it's such a big idea to grasp. And he's got like his little floppy disks. And then he's like just told on this phone that like he needs to trust this and that they're coming for him. And it's just like, this crazy, like, you're like, what? And then like, as soon as we like leave the Matrix, then it was like kind of hokey and fun. But I was like, that whole first part, I was like, this is scary. This is terrifying. Yes. And like, like how it all unfolds.
So many nightmares of mine.
And I believe it. I totally believe it. And so I kind of felt cheated as someone who, like, society has spoiled with like the reality of what it was.
Oh yeah, the spoilers of it.
Oh, I wish I could have like been like I wish I could have been Neo waking up in the Matrix, watching the Matrix. You know, like, why do my eyes hurt? So the big thing that the Matrix is based off of is the procession of simulacra, which is by or the it's actually not called that. It is called Simulacra and Simulation is what it's called, and it's by Jean Baudrillard, French.
Baudrillard?
Yeah.
Baudrillard?
Baudrillard with French sounds. And the reason why this is, the more prolific thing to refer to is that, like, Neo literally stashes his illegal software in a hollowed out copy of this book. Mm-hmm. So they're like, look, this is what it's from. And so this was published in 1981, and it essentially argues that consumer culture is our simulated world, because it relies on us like replaying and imitating reality in what like we don't really need anymore. So like we live in a very easy society in life, right? Yeah. So like we do fitness not because we might die tomorrow because there's animals chasing us and we have to survive and we have to catch those things. It's because we want to be fit and we want to be hot. Like it's for these purely just like superficial
because our doctor
reasons.
Tells us that our heart hurts and that we should do it
because you've just been sitting there. But I mean, like it's very like minimal in regards to like how we used to have to survive, right? Yeah. Like a lot of the ways, like we're just kind of playing human in a way now.
Where you're playing the game of being human.
Yeah, exactly. So there's even like a line in the film where Morpheus introduced Neo when he brings him to the real world. He says. He calls it the desert of the real, which is a phrase taken from the first page of the Simulacra and Simulation. And so that's like one of the main things is like they're saying we have this like simulation, like we have been told this is what reality is, and now we're just kind of playing, like we're playing people. Yeah. So we don't need the things that we need, we used to need, and so like that's kind of like where we get that, and that's where like capitalism is the machine, right? Like you're like we don't need any of the things in the simulation, but they're designed that way because we perceive that we do need those things.
Yeah.
Right? So the entire concept of Matrix films can be interpreted as a criticism of the unreal consumer culture that we live in. And I got these quotes from SparkNotes.
Ooh,
super helpful. Cool. Yeah. There were some other like things. There was like a ad for a article that was like top 10 thirstiest characters in novels, and I was like gonna click it. It was bad. I think it should be done better because it wasn't correct. But anyway, that's where I got a lot of this information from, if you're wondering. But essentially, in this consumer culture, that it distracts us from the reality that we are being exploited by someone or something, just as the machines exploit the humans in the Matrix for bioelectricity, right? So it's like we're going through the motions of being a human and being a person so that we can fit into the society's box that tells us this is what society is, and we don't ask any questions about our reality. We're not like, but what if this isn't real? And so, and in one of the quotes in there is that the consumer society is premised on the idea that consumption is a powerful element of social control, whereby desires long attached from material needs are instilled as a part of system of signs and subsequent satisfied via another system of signs. So it's, like I said, you don't need it, but we think we need it.
Yeah.
And so we do those things. So
checks out.
We have this like, which is going to lead me to my big my next big rant. Essentially, there's this quote from Morpheus and Neo where they're talking about what the Matrix is. And Morpheus says, "The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is a world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth." And Neo says, "What truth?" And so he says, "That you are a slave. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot taste, smell, or touch. A prison for your own mind." Which brings me to my main man, Karl Marx, y'all. Yeah. So
yeah, that's pretty real.
Woo-hoo, let's talk about him. I'm excited. When I was like kind of going down this, I was like, that sounds like we are slaves to capitalism. And then I saw one line that said it. I was like, here we go. Dive. And now I'm going down to my rabbit hole, which is Karl Marx. And me and him were good pals. So essentially, we are currently living in a simulation nightmare, right? Because capitalism is so strongly ingrained in us that even now, when we exist in a literal pandemic nightmare, that highlights all of the flaws in our society and system. Like a lot of things clearly were not working. We are still fighting against that to go back to normal, quote unquote.
And normal is bad.
Right? Like we have this society that we have these severely underpaid and underappreciated workers who previously to this pandemic, we said were not good enough or qualified enough to earn $15 an hour, but now they're essential. Right? And we want everyone to go back to work so we can have Karen and Chad and all of them get their hair cut and they can go to the movies because that's important to us in our society. It's not important. It is not a necessity to survive. You know what a necessity to survive is? Health. Being not sick. So that's where we're at.
Have enough money to pay rent.
Having
to have
enough,
like house.
Yeah. Or
to feel safe and
maybe
not
don't have to pay rent. Let's freeze rent. Ridiculous. Anyway, I got into. I started a Facebook argument today where someone had posted like that 72% of Americans believe that we need to keep America closed essentially until it is safe, until the health officials say it's safe. And someone commented on this person's post and said, "It is your right to go outside, or your right to stay inside, just like it's my right to go outside." And then, and you can practice that. And then the person who posted it commented, like, "I don't have the right to go to stay inside because she's an essential employee." Yeah. And I commented, if they open it up, they are expecting everyone to go out now. If you want the economy to be fixed, they are expecting you to go out. So if you do not go out, it is a choice, and now all those things that were protecting us are gone. Like, they won't have those things in place for you. So it takes away your choice that you thought you had to go in or out. So it's not real. None of this is real. We're in a simulation. So we have, these, people who are protesting to reopen our economy, cough, capitalism, cough, for their haircuts, which is ridiculous, right?
And then they're all getting sick and being like, "Oh, dang, maybe
I wish more of them got sick, honestly."
Wrong.
Yeah, like, it's for these really useless, unimportant things, but they are seen as important because of the simulation that we live in, right? It is like this acting out of humanity that we have put so much importance on these mundane things that don't really exist. Like, we really need to just take a break and be people and whatever. So it's like, for all those people, kindly take a seat, boomer. I don't want it. You're not out here. I mean, honestly, the very existence of our current president and the honest likelihood of the next 4 years being him as well, just because of the state of the world, and it's really tragic and sad. It makes me really sad. Really shows us how far this fantasy and simulation goes. Yeah. Right? Because we have a fantasy in America, which we've discussed in previous episodes, and it's called the American Dream. Right? It's the American simulation, right? And so it's this incredibly fictional and unattainable dream that keeps our society in check, just like Karl Marx said, right? We have this, like, his counterpart, what is his name? Oh, I'm so rude. Engels. Yes, Engels. He essentially calls it this false consciousness. So there's this idea that we don't know that we're being controlled or that we don't have any power because we perceive ourselves to not be controlled and not have any power. We believe that we are above that and we're not, in the simulation, but you are. We live this American dream because, and we talked about this before, that we don't want to change the world because we want to benefit and reap the benefits later.
Yeah.
When we achieve the dream, right?
That we won't achieve.
And it just makes me think of Cypher in the film, who is, spoilers, the bad guy, right? He's the one who is out there in the Matrix, and he has this time where he looks and he's just like, I don't want to struggle anymore. I don't want to live this awful life. I want to go back to the simulation. And I was like, dog, I get it. Like, I'm with you. Like, I don't want to put everybody else under the bus, but I can understand. And being an American and understanding how Americans think, I was like, 100% people would go back. We all want to think that we're the heroes that would fight back against it and revolutionize, but we don't do that.
A lot of people want the easy way out.
We do not do that. It's very apparent. We are living in the worst timeline right now with the way that people are reacting. So very clearly that we wouldn't have the revolution that they have in the film, unfortunately. But with Cypher, he has this moment where he's with Agent Smith and he's eating a steak. And he says, I know the steak isn't real.
Yeah.
I know it's fake and you're just putting stuff in my mind, but when I take a bite, it's delicious and I want this. And he is willing to give up everything and to put his friends, quote unquote, in danger because he wants the money and the luxury, no matter how fake it is, even though he knows that is an illusion, he wants to live the illusion.
Yeah.
And that's America. That's the American dream, is you want to live that illusion, right?
You think it'll bring you happiness, and it's...
Yeah. And it's does this sound familiar? Right? And it does. Yeah. Because we, in our current life in horror of society, right, we don't have giant insect-like Lovecraftian robots siphoning our bodies for energy. Honestly, that couldn't happen. We don't have enough energy in us to fuel enough. Yeah. It's dumb. But we do have real monsters that are the money-hungry corporations and billionaires. I'm looking at you, Jeff Bezos, who could pay for all the unemployment that's happening in this country right now and not even notice. Wouldn't even notice. It would do nothing. He has too much money, he couldn't even spend it in this lifetime. That should be illegal. Anyway, I'm looking at those are the things that are siphoning the actual energy from us, because we go to work, we put in all that time and effort, not getting $15 an hour, and then at the end of it, you end up dead and he ends up a millionaire with money he does not need. He is the robot. That's... Wake up, sheeple! Is where I'm at right now, right?
Well, people are essential until they're not. That's essential. They weren't essential before.
Yeah.
We thought
all of a sudden
they just weren't educated. They didn't work hard enough to get up higher in the ranks.
Yeah.
But now they're essential because the virus can kill everybody.
Yeah. It doesn't care. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't know what essential and non-essential is. It doesn't know what a college degree is.
So what we want back is convenience. Mm-hmm. So we're telling them that they're essential because, yes, the basic needs that we need are food, water, health care, stuff like that. So
making sure things.
But
are
we
clean.
don't want to actually give those people the things that they deserve to survive and feel okay. Because we hope to be Jeff Bezos one day.
Yeah, and it's like that. Those robots and the monsters in this film are essentially that 1%, right? Those are the people who are, living off of our hard work, our energy, our literal energy. They are the robots siphoning our energy, and we're doing that. And we are in the Matrix in that we live in this capitalistic society where we are distracted by means and goods, right? We're distracted by the internet, by TikTok, right? We're in this happy-go-lucky world where we need, and it's not to hate on finding those outlets, because this world is really dark and it's totally okay for you to find those outlets. Yeah. But it's more of an understanding that we can't use that to also continue to be blind to the problems in our society that have been shown to be the problems, right? We have highlighted them now that we can look at them clearly. We can all take a step back and go, that wasn't working. Everything's falling apart. What makes you think that if we just do it all over again the same way? It's you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's stupidity. That is idiocy. That's not real.
Insanity.
Yes, it's insanity. And so we have to take that to and understand that we are the cogs in the machine. Like, whether or not we really are, like, if this is all a simulation, right?
Yeah.
Our simulation is designed to make the people work for the few. And those few are the robots that are siphoning our energy, right? And we do this every day, and we do it willingly because we're blind, right? And because it's convenient to not look and not to ask questions and not to create a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's convenient to use Amazon's 2-day shipping, especially now, to get something that you really do not need during the quarantine. No one's seeing you, right? And like, but people are doing that, and people are actively putting other people in harm's way because of this simulation that we've lived in for forever. So that's why I was like, it just seems so like, apparent, right? And so Marx argues that the working class is exploited by the ruling class, and the working class exploitation is only possible because it does not perceive itself as being exploited. Like, we just are too proud to admit that this is a problem. And so it misunderstands its own position because it's distracted by all of those things that we've been playing at, like the simulacra, right? And so then we, don't try to change it, right? So there's other parts where, so Morpheus says that the Matrix is a system. He says that system is our enemy, but when you're inside, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. Because at the end of the day, people are going to go back into the simulation.
Yeah.
They're not going to rise up and try to make a difference. And we try, like, sometimes you got to sacrifice those people in order to get there. It was like their way to validate hurting the real people, which I was like, when I was watching, I was like, oh God, that's a real person.
Yeah,
they're like killing all those real people, and it was freaking me out. But like, I get it, because it's like they're unfortunately a means to an end. And if the higher ups are willing to use us as tools, we kind of have to look past it as well and sing to their level. There's other themes in this that I'll kind of go over pretty briefly. There is this play with fate and free will, and my argument for this is that free will isn't real. It doesn't exist. And the reason for that is the placement of the oracle, which they tried to like fix up at the end in the trilogy, the last one, where she said like she didn't really know. She was just believing and guessing. But her belief in her position of power is what influenced that. It's like, would they have done any of those things? Would this ending happen if she didn't? So she was effectively creating that world. It's kind of that thing. It's like, did I choose this, or am I, like if you hear about fate, hear about what your fate is, and it happens, is it because it was going to happen anyway, or is it because someone told you?
Yeah, so and then like the people who try to avoid it or whatever, like they've changed.
Yeah, and then you're like, but you still end up like, it's a whole thing. You
thought you were gonna die, would you still go on that trip? And it's like,
well. And then it's like with her, is like she told him that he wasn't the chosen one because then he would act. Like she was purposely manipulating him to get the results she wanted.
Yeah, and she says it very early on because he knocks over the lamp. She says, don't worry about the lamp. He turns to say, what lamp? Knocks over the lamp, and he's like, the real question is, would you have knocked it over if I didn't say anything?
Exactly.
And that's what'll mess with you.
Yeah, and like, don't even get me started with the whole motifs of the magical Negroes that we have in this film. We have 2 of them. And in the original casting, Neo was supposed to be Will Smith. And then Morpheus was a white actor, which I'm blanking on who it was, which would have been a nice, refreshing thing. Like, old white man tells young black boy how to be the one. I would love that film. Let's remake it. Because as much as I love Lawrence Fishburne, I thought he did a really amazing job, it gets tiring. And I know it's the 90s, it's fine.
It was 1999. Things were still very offensive. And they still are now, but like even more. They
did an amazing job with like, the diversity of characters. There was something I was reading about trans inclusion and the different kind of roles that were happening. And the character Switch was actually supposed to be androgynous, and more so that they were supposed to fluidly change between being male and female. Like they would have a male actor and a female actor playing this character that would switch between roles. And that was amazing to me. I thought that would have been phenomenal. And I mean, they've already done so much at that time, like given the limited ability that they had. So I give kudos to them, definitely. There's no it's just the way of the world that we get these characters, right? The last thing I kind of want to touch on is Plato's Allegory of the Cave, because that's what the whole simulation is. And so, like Kat said, there's a time where Neo wakes up in the real world, and he's like, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus is like, that's because you've never used them before. And I was like, what in the Plato's Allegory of the Cave is going on here? And I was like, yeah. It's like, that's exactly what it is. So if you don't know what Plato's Allegory of the Cave is, essentially Plato, the philosopher, you know him, he imagined this cave in which people have been kept prisoners since birth. This is the only thing they've ever known is this cave. They're bound in a way that they can only see, like, their backs to, like, a wall, and they can only see shadows on the wall. They can't see each other. It's darkness. They can only see shadows. So they perceive reality as these shadows. Things are those shadows. People are those shadows. And voices, right?
Yeah.
One of them gets free. He goes out into the real world, sees that it's a lot. One, it's terrifying and it's crippling because he's never seen the world before. It's blinding, all of this light. But eventually he learns. And so then he goes back to help the prisoners and slowly teach them what the real world is.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole, like, the biggest part of this is that Plato says that those who free themselves and come to perceive reality have a duty to return and teach others, which is what Neo's whole thing is. It's like he wants to release them. Although in the end, the Oracle and the Architect have this agreement that it is a choice. Yeah. That people will choose to stay in or leave, but they will be given that choice actively, right? So it's like a part of it is like not quite, but it is something, right? And he is going back, and he is seen as like the one. I won't even go into that because I think it's kind of dumb. But that's kind of like the whole role of this film, is that when you have come to the truth, it is your job to go through. And that's what Morpheus and the team do. Mm-hmm. They go back and they try to save people, and they slowly do, and that's how we have Zion. So there's a lot of religious allegory in here. Nebuchadnezzar has like a plaque on it. This is Mark 3, number 11. And in the Gospel of Mark in the New Testament, it says, "And unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him and cried, saying, 'Thou art the Son of God,'" which is like supposed to be Neo, because he's the chosen one. But one I thought was fun is Agent Smith's first appearance in Matrix Reloaded. We see a license plate that says IS 5416, which is in the Old Testament, chapter 54, verse 16 of Isaiah, and it reads, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy." So, and actually in this chapter, Isaiah refers to the Lord's assurance that Zion, the promised land for the Israelites, will be victorious in future glory. And he reminds his people that he created everything, and goes on to reassure them that no weapon forged against you will prevail. So it's literally like, this is what the film is. Right from the beginning. Don't you love religious allegory? It's one of my favorites. There's a lot in here. Like, especially if you go to SparkNotes or you just go to anything about the Matrix, you know, there's things about like the reflections, or the fact that like robots and people, it's kind of hard to distinguish the differences between them, because the people, when they're in there, are pretty robotic and just follow the rules, and then the robots are the ones that are doing things weird and at times seem more human. So it's a very interesting like dichotomy there, but I think it's just telling you like that what we expect robots to be is wrong. That the robots would be us. The robots would look just like us, and if not more like us. And that's how, like, because you wouldn't really believe it otherwise. Yeah. Like, you wouldn't trust a robot that's all insect-like and scary and has a baby face. But if a person walks up and is like, here's what reality is, you're like, yeah.
And then it's just, honestly, since the humans are the ones that are more robotic inside the simulation, it's just going to show that, like, we are, easily, in terms of capitalism, manipulated into following the flow of things so that we do not get cast out from society, or whatever the hallucination is normal. We want the collective one to be the one that we see, so that we're not considered to have uncontrolled hallucinations and any sort of, like, mental health.
Yes. Okay, so now...
maybe we're more enlightened.